This is ILTV on the hour, bringing you the biggest stories from Israel and the Middle East in just 5 minutes. I'm Joyce Bedrosian, and today is day 628 of the war in Gaza, and the first full day a ceasefire is in effect with Iran after the 12-day war. It is 7 a.m. in New York and 6 p.m. here in Israel. Let's get into all the top headlines at this hour. We begin this hour with the devastating news that the IDF announces 7 soldiers were killed in southern Gaza on Tuesday. The IDF confirms the names as 21-year-old Staff Sergeant Alon Davidov, 21-year-old Lieutenant Matan Yashikovsky, 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Ronald Ben Moshe, 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Niv Radia, 19-year-old Sergeant Ronan Shapiro, 21-year-old Sergeant Shachar Manoav, and 20-year-old Sergeant Mayan Perlstein. May their memories forever be a blessing. The men were driving in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza when an explosive that was planted on their vehicle by terror operatives detonated, according to an initial assessment made by the IDF. The explosion set the vehicle on fire, killing all of the men inside. Despite many rescue efforts to also put the fire out and to save these men, the young men were all part of the Combat Engineering Battalion. And the first full day of the ceasefire between Israel and Iran has passed without major incident. And for the first time in 12 days, sirens didn't occur overnight or in the morning for Israelis. U.S. President Trump said the war is over and Iran is done with its nuclear ambitions. Meanwhile, Trump said the U.S. is not pushing for a regime change in Iran. Netanyahu told the nation that Israel had defeated Iranian ambitions to destroy Israel. Let's take a listen to what he had to say after the ceasefire took effect.
אזרחי ישראל היקרים, ב-12 הימים של מבצע עם כלבי השגנו ניצחון היסטורי, והניצחון הזה יעמוד לדורות. הסרנו מעלינו 2 איומים קיומיים מיידיים, איום ההשמדה בפצצות גרעין ואיום ההשמדה ב-20,000 טילים בליסטיים. אם לא היינו פועלים עכשיו, מדינת ישראל הייתה עומדת בקרוב בפני סכנת השמדה. אבל זה לא קרה. כי ברגע המכריע קמנו כלוי, נעמדנו כארי, והשאגה שלנו הרעידה את טהרן והדהדה בכל העולם.
And after 12 days of inflicting great damages on Iranian nuclear and missile capabilities, the Israeli Air Force did not target Iran since yesterday morning. Meanwhile, the question of how much damage was done to the key underground nuclear enrichment facility in Fordo remains key to learning how far successful the U.S. strikes actually were. Now, conflicting claims are beginning to emerge, but a top Israeli official confirmed it's really too early to say. Now, U.S. President Trump insists the U.S. strikes over the weekend completely and totally, quote, obliterated Iran's key nuclear facilities. The Israeli ambassador agreed that the Iranian program was pushed back, but was uncertain about Fordo. According to reports made by CNN and the New York Times, preliminary U.S. classified findings indicate that the attack sealed off the entrances to 2 facilities but did not collapse underground buildings. After the U.S. bombing happened, attacks by the Israeli Air Force, reported by the Defense Intelligence Agency, estimates that the program had been delayed, but by less than 6 months. Trump took to Truth Social, calling out the reports from CNN and the New York Times, saying the nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed, and it was one of the most successful military strikes in history. And Iran's last Israeli victims in the 12-day war have been identified after an Iranian ballistic missile tore through the top 2 floors of an apartment building in Beersheba, killing 5 people yesterday. Now, 4 of the 5 victims have been identified. 18-year-old Corporal Eitan Zaks was killed with his 18-year-old girlfriend, Noah Bogoslavsky, and his mother, Michal. Zaks was in combat training in the elite multi-dimensional unit, but was home doing an online medics course because of the ongoing security situation. Bogoslavsky was from Arad, was visiting her boyfriend when the attack happened. And the 3 of them left their safe room after hearing the initial siren, but didn't make it back into the shelter after the second siren sounded. Ynet reports the father of the family survived the attack after he was trapped under the rubble. And officials also say Naomi Shanan was killed in her nearby apartment and was known for her hard work with the Hostages Family Forum throughout the city. We know that 28 people over the 12-day war were killed and more than 3,000 people were injured. Thousands of Israelis have now been displaced as a result of their homes being damaged from ballistic missile hits. And joining us now to discuss the response by Israeli police on every single impacted site is Master Sergeant Dean Elsdunne, the international spokesperson for the Israeli police. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Shosh. And before I even get started on talking about the police response, I want to say that on behalf of the entire police force, our thoughts and prayers are with both the families of the IDF soldiers that were murdered, that we just got the news about that, the 7 soldiers, and also the families of those that absorbed the sheer terror that the Iranian missiles impacted throughout the Operation Rising Lion. It's a sad thing to see that the target of terror has constantly been our civilian communities.
Yeah, Dean, you and I both have spent the last 12 days, on scene together, and we've seen the miraculous and the incredible work the Israeli police have actually done to save these lives on these locations. I don't know if people actually know the extent of the work Israeli police does. Can you talk to us about what a typical response would be if there was a ballistic missile hit? What did Israeli police do when they first arrived to the scene?
So I can tell you that it's definitely something that's overlooked, and we're not looking for the spotlight on us, but Operation Rising Lion definitely showed the world that the front lines and the battlefield is not just on borders and it's not just abroad. It's here in our cities, and that's where the Israel police comes in. You're talking about men and women who wear this uniform, whose main goal is to save lives. And it varies in different units and departments inside of the Israel police, but everybody has a specific role to play. They were playing it. When the emergency dispatch first gets the call, our bomb squads are rushing to the scene together with patrol officers. And I remind you that our police officers aren't sitting in barracks. We're out in the streets, especially for this, especially during times of war, because we're on heightened alert. We've recruited over 7 battalions of reserve border police officers that can reinforce the units. We have standby squads made up of civilians that train underneath the Israel police for moments like this when we need to get to locations fast. And our officers showed that time and time again, running under fire, carrying out their duties with professionalism, responding to chaos, evacuation. Our bomb squads go in and they clear the area for missile fragments and clear it of any secondary explosives that might go off so that the other officers can rush in. And that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. Even the police officers who go in under fire, no fear for their own life, and leaving their families behind in shelter so that they can go in and they can protect our communities. We're rescuing people that are underneath rubble. We're rescuing pets that are trapped underneath rubble, all because we know that at the end of the day, these are our communities. They rely on us. When we wear this uniform, whether it's the blue one, the green tactical one, or the gray one that belong to our border police, we're all working together with different agencies of the same goal, and that's to respond to our civilians. And it's important to also mention that when I say civilians, it's not a matter of Jews or anybody's background, because when an attack like this happens in our communities, the Israel police are not asking people, what religion are you? What background are you? They see somebody who needs help and they rush in and they help them. And our men in uniform come from all these different backgrounds, all with the same goal: to save lives.
Yeah, Dean, yesterday was a really difficult scene. It was the last Iranian ballistic missile attack that Israel experienced. You and I were both on the scene. When I was there, I watched these crews inside of this, fallen down top 2 stories of this building, working to find the remains. You mentioned that the ballistic missiles, when they do land, part of the job Israeli police need to do is make sure these explosives are cleared. We've consistently talked about the force of these ballistic missiles and how they differ from different types of rockets and missiles Israel has experienced in the past. But from your observation, from what you've seen on the ground and have heard from first responders, what is the difference between these ballistic missiles and the damage they did cause during this war?
Well, I mean, I think we can see the damage ourselves and understand what kind of missiles we're talking about. Ones that take off entire sides of buildings, absolutely destroy residential buildings. We've seen it in different areas of central Israel. We saw the results of the Soroka hospital. And when our police officers are going inside of there, I've spoken with the bomb squads. They've told me that these are extremely heavy explosives, missiles that are landing here. We're talking about over 400 kilos just in the warhead itself. And they've also described very different missiles being used, including cluster bombs, which means that you can have one missile that lands and takes out an entire building, but they've also, Iranian regime has also fired cluster bomb style missiles that spread over kilometers. And so the bomb squads aren't just responding to one scene, now they're responding to many, because even though the physical damage has been done by the explosive itself, it can still lead to more damage when individuals are approaching these missile fragments. They have very dangerous material on them. They can also explode cars or gas lines, different things of the sort. And it can also, with the blast and the blast radius, I should say, also causes extensive damage when you're talking about windows being blown out at a speed that's can probably be said equivalent to bullets, in the fact that it can still harm and kill people that are not inside of their shelters.
Right, I know. And we've talked about how all of this stuff needed to be removed before your forces could even go inside to rescue people. So that first step of what Israeli police did was so crucial to getting, people who might have been trapped under this rubble out in a time that probably saved their lives. I want to talk about just your forces and even the mental health side of all of this, going into these situations, not knowing the extent of the damage, but also how many people might have been injured, might have died. Can you talk to me about a moment for you during this war that stays with you, that sticks with you, a story that you heard from one of your responders, or something that you might have personally experienced after one of these missiles hit a residential area?
I always love to look at the silver lining and the positive stories. It's very difficult during these days when you're talking about people who have unfortunately been murdered at the hands of these terror regime ballistic missiles that have been fired at them. But here and there, I think that there's countless of these stories where people are actually being rescued underneath the rubble, and they don't even, they're not thinking that there's any hope, and then all of a sudden there's the rubble that's stuck on top of them being removed. They see the police officer coming to rescue them. I mean, me and you were also standing inside of central Israel when somebody was outside of the police line looking for their pet for hours, and I remember seeing that pet moved from underneath the rubble, that orange cat, and they were hanging it up like Simba. We ran down to the lady who was outside of the police line. We brought her the cat, and she was so happy, even though her entire house was destroyed. You can see the relief that the most important thing in the world to her was not her house. The house can be rebuilt, but her pet, that's what was important to her. And we've seen that over time and time again. You have Dan Cohen, who was working in Beersheba. He left his house. He's a patrol officer who made Aliyah from France 11 years ago, and he left his family inside of their bomb shelter when he heard that down the street there was a family that was stuck inside of a damaged building. They were stuck inside of the shelter. He ran over there, and he was able to rescue that family. He opened up that shelter, grabbed the boy out from inside of the shelter, and guided his parents outside. We actually had them reunite not too long ago, just a few days ago, and you could see that it's such an emotional reunion, because he's talking about why he made Aliyah, why he joined the Israel police, and it was to save lives. And I think that that's a reoccurrence in all of our men and women who are wearing the uniform. Their DNA is to save lives, and the meaning of it.
Yeah, we've seen those incredible heroic moments of Israeli police and other first responders rescuing babies out of buildings. I've seen it. I caught it on camera myself, specifically in Ramat Gan. These moments, not only that, there's an extra layer to what these first responders did. Not only do they save lives, but then they're reuniting lives, like you said. Together, we watched this baby being saved, reuniting with its mother by United Hatzalah, and it all happened just within 12 seconds of the rescue, and the mother's waiting. And there's so many emotional moments that you can see and witness as someone who's on these scenes right when these rescue operations are happening. Dean, something else the both of us have continued to talk about are the importance of these shelters, these protected spaces for Israelis. We know that 2.6 million Israelis do not have proper shelters at this point. Can you talk about the importance and the significance of people sheltering in place, because we have seen the difference between life and death with them?
Absolutely. When me and you, and were standing inside of the neighborhood in Tel Aviv, I showed you that the entire building, the residential building, was destroyed. But the one place that was left intact, almost untouched, was the bomb shelter that was underneath the building. And then across the street from that was a single family home where the whole house was gone. There were no more walls. Everything was destroyed. All of their personal belongings were underneath the rubble. But there was one room that remained intact, and that was their bomb room, their bomb shelter room. And that's where we recovered both that family out from, and the over 50 people who were inside of the bomb shelter that was underground of that residential building. And time again, we've seen this over and over again, where when people listen to the instructions of the Home Front Command, when they take it seriously, they go into these bomb shelters and they wait for the message from Home Front Command that it's all clear. Lives are being saved. There's no doubt about it. Their entire building may be gone, but that shelter is staying intact.
Yeah, we've seen those, the miklats you mentioned, specifically in Ramat Aviv, where we were standing the other day, a completely decimated, obliterated building. The entire front of that building, the debris was everywhere, but the miklats, the underground protected space, like you said, was completely untouched. And we've heard these incredible stories of people surviving. And there was actually video of first responders going down to that basement protected space and getting people out. And they were also shocked that everyone nearly survived that experience. Thank you so much for all of your efforts and being out in the fields with reporters and sharing with us really what is happening on the ground, because it makes it easier for us to communicate with our audience what we are seeing, what we're hearing, and how these missiles, these ballistic missiles, made direct impacts on residential areas. There's no doubt about it. You and I both saw it with our own eyes. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. And I just want to quickly take one last opportunity to thank all of the police officers who are putting their lives on the line every single day. And I want to thank their families who are at home. Their wives and their husbands are holding down the families underneath this threat while they understand the greater purpose of their loved ones going out to rescue members of their community. It's an unbelievable thing to do. And I definitely salute them. I know that their nation does too.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your time. And joining us now to discuss if this war with Iran was successful based on what officials are saying is Professor Kobi Michael, a senior researcher fellow at Misgav. Kobi, thanks so much for joining us and for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, and the INSS as well.
I want to specifically talk about this successful operation, according to Netanyahu, according to President Trump. Is it successful? I think that's the question people woke up here in Israel wondering if it is successful. You do know that we are hearing that more than 700 people inside of Iran were arrested for some type of collaboration, according to officials there, with Israel. In addition, we know that 3 men actually were hanged just yesterday for some type of collaboration. This is, of course, alleged collaboration. Is it a success?
It looks that it is a very successful operation, but I think that we still need time for having historical and strategic retrospective about the operation, because I think that we have to perceive this operation as the last phase of the Israeli strategy that was crystallized since and following October 7 attack. And the basic idea was the motivation to create the change of a second order, as we say in the strategic language, which means the change of the entire system. And this is, I would say, the fourth phase of this strategy. When we have reached to Iran, the head of the octopus, actually the most substantial center of gravity of this regional system, or the rival regional system. And after peeling Iran from its capacities, beginning with the proxies, Hamas, and later on Hezbollah, and after changing entirely the situation in Syria, that was a very strategic, I would say, location for Iran. We have reached to Iran itself, and I would like to remind our viewers that we began this peeling of Iran on the attack of October 26 last year, 24. And at the end of the day, what we are witnessing now is not only a change of a regional order or regional architecture, we are witnessing a change of a global order, because the United States is in, and we know about Russia, China, North Korea, which are part of this axis in this way or another. So eventually, we are talking about a very dramatic event, about a very, I would say, tectonic event, and we still need time in order to internalize all the implications or all the impacts of this operation. But I would say that it is very successful, very impressive, and maybe we will need to invent a new superlative in order to define or to characterize the impact of this operation.
President Trump did say yesterday they weren't necessarily looking for a regime change in Iran, but you mentioned regional change. How can this regime still be in place in order to create change? Can it stay in order for there to be change in the Middle East?
I think that everybody will be happy if this regime will disappear. But you know that at least our experience, I think that the American experience as well, with regard to political engineering, trying to replace or to change regimes, is not a very successful one. I think that all the idea of regime change in Iran is something that must be done by the Iranian people. I think that Israel, as well as the United States, facilitated the way towards such a change by providing the Iranian people with very good, I would say, starting point. But the work must be done by the Iranians themselves. I think that we are talking about a very weak, fragile regime that will be mostly concentrated on its survival. And I think that this regime feels very threatened from the domestic arena. Okay, and I believe that it will not be free enough in order to rebuild its capacities with regard to the region, with regard to Israel, with regard to the United States. And this is an opportunity for the Iranian society, for the Iranian people to create the change. If it will be at the end of the day, I cannot assure you, but I think that the probability is higher. And with regard to the regional changes, when this regime is still on its place, I think that we are talking about a change that has already begun, because this regime is much weaker than it used to be before. It is much less threatening the regional players and even beyond. And this regime lost its capacities mainly with regard to the proxies, but not only, it lost its capacities with regard to the military nuclear infrastructure, and with regard to the ballistic missiles as well, in addition to many other losses with regard to command and control, leaders, commanders, and some other assets that they lost. And in this regard, I think that we have facilitated the opportunity for a new regional architecture.
Now, we're just getting an update in right now that Iran is saying their nuclear facilities are severely damaged by the U.S. attacks, although we did see reports that came out last night that said they weren't, and that these attacks only set them back by months, if not years. What is your take on this? Why is there so much misinformation about if these nuclear facilities were in fact damaged to throw out the nuclear capabilities inside of Iran?
I'm not sure that the conversation about the level of the damage that was created there is so crucial and the most important issue. There is no doubt that the three major nuclear facilities, which are Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan, were damaged in a very severe manner. I think that the conversation or the talk should be focused on the Iranian possibility or potential to recover these facilities. And due to the fact that they will need a lot of money, a lot of efforts, a lot of means, and a lot of time in order to reconstitute these facilities, and due to the fact that we have a very good intelligence monitoring over Iran, and due to the fact that we have aerial superiority and freedom of military activity and American, I would say, obligation that Iran will not have such capabilities, it will be pretty, I would say, simple and easy in a relative manner, okay, to find out if the Iranians intend to recover these capacities and to destroy and to dismantle or to mow the grass and to prevent them from doing that. I'm not sure that they are capable to do that in the near future, and I believe that due to the fragility and the weakness of this regime, we might find ourselves in a year or two from today in a new political reality, a new regime in Iran. And I assume that the new regime will not be so interested in devoting the efforts, the capacities, the resources in recovering the nuclear capacities. And if this regime will remain, I'm not sure, because what I told you before, due to its fragility and due to its weakness and the sense of threat on its own survival, I'm not sure that it will prefer devoting the efforts and concentrating on recovering these capacities, but on keeping its survival.
Now, we just have about a minute and a half left, but I really want to get to this question. You mentioned Iran as being the head of the snake, funding all these different terror organizations. Specifically, let's talk about Hamas. What could this do to the war in Gaza? Do you think we could be closer to seeing a ceasefire or a hostage deal between Israel and Hamas at this point in time?
I'm not sure about it. I think that we are more or less in the same point that we were before the campaign in the military campaign in Iran, and we have to understand and to internalize that the way that the Iranian think and the way that Hamas think is very different than the way that we think about the reality and about the idea of what a victory is. And in their perception, in their consciousness, they are in a sense of a victory. We listen carefully to the things that are said by the Iranian regime, and we listen carefully to the things that are said by Hamas, and they are in the perception, or I would say in the feeling, that they are winning the war. Because as long as the strongest military in the entire Middle East has not succeeded to defeat Hamas completely yet, this is the victory in their eyes. And therefore, I'm not sure that we are getting closer to a deal. I believe that the higher probability to reach to such a point is by occupying the entire Gaza Strip and dismantling finally the rest of Hamas capabilities there, and then to change the entire reality and to provide better, I would say, better conditions for a final deal, a final agreement.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We know that 50 hostages remain in Gaza at this time, and 7 IDF soldiers were just killed yesterday. Professor Kobi Michael, thanks for being with us today to explain all of this.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap on ILTV on the Hour. Thanks so much for being with us.